Okay, reading from the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, Volume 1, Chapter 2, Text 13. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tato bhivādya devarṣim uvācendraḥ śanair hriyā gāndharva-kalābhijña upahasann asi. Indra then welcomed Nārada, and in a soft voice humbly said, "My dear Nārada, expert in the arts of the Gandharvas, why are you making fun of me?" Purport: the Gandharvas are clever and tricky. A person well trained in their arts certainly knows how to manipulate others with false praise and ridicule. Indra knows that Nārada is not an ordinary Gandharva, but Indra is enjoying a humorous exchange. Om Agana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Taksurun Mulatam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Rasi, somehow I plugged my computer in, but maybe it wasn't proper, so it's going to run out of juice. Get that black thing, plug it in here. There must be a...
Yeah.
So greetings from the Super Soul Farm. Raghunath's in Italy, but I'm here with Mallory and Rasi Govinda up until my retreat upstate New York, which will be in about, well, less than 2 weeks. It'll be a week from this weekend. And this weekend, His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj will have a function for his disciples and friends and well-wishers. He has one every year at this time, so I'm up here. I'd certainly like to go. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami will be there. My good friend Jayanta will also come, and of course, Sri Satsvarup Maharaj. I took sannyas from His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj in 41 years ago. I must have been crazy. I was less than 32 years old. And remember, I'll just tell the story because it's interesting, is that at that particular time, you had to take sannyas from the zonal acharya, the person who was in charge. There were 11 people that were initiating, and they were GVCs, and they would charge of particular areas. And generally, you had to take sannyas from them. The problem is the person in my area, although he was probably the best leader and manager, and I really appreciated how he empowered me. He was very empowering. His standard of sannyas was not inspiring. In fact, one of the other acharyas at that time wrote a song about all the other acharyas, and the line for Bhavananda was, I said this many times, rubies, diamonds, rings, and pearls, just attract fools to the spiritual world, dashing, handsome, and carefree, Bhavananda Goswami. So I wasn't inspired, so I was in a dilemma. So at that time, as you know, we had such a friendly relationship with Srila Dhanurdhara Maharaj. And he had put Prabhupada in Samadhi, and our understanding he was a senior Vaishnava that we could go to advice. So I went to him and I said, this is my dilemma. But then I said, there's no, it's just a formality who you take sannyas from. And Srila Dhanurdhara Maharaj said, there are no formalities in Vaishnava relationships. Relationships have to be real. So you take for the person who inspires you most in renunciation. And that was Satsvarup Maharaj. Like I think his sadhu, he was very much like a sadhu. He would hardly ever sleep. He'd get up at midnight every night. Very gentle. So somehow Krishna gave me the intelligence to somehow speak to Bhavananda in a way that he gave his blessings. So he's my sannyas guru. So I will go over there and offer my respects. Now, this particular section of the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, to my core dedicated group, this is the real people interested here. I mean, they come both times during the week. I find this section, I look at different sections, and this one's a little bit, I look for things that I have like a philosophical realization or an interesting point on. I try to see what is the main point of that section. I don't spend much time preparing, 15 minutes the most, but I try to look and put everything in context and what's going on. And oh, this is a point that I could really say something on. But this particular section I found a little bit difficult, because basically we know the template, Nārada is searching for the topmost devotee. And one of the ways in which we see who is the topmost devotee is through the eyes of the previous Vaishnava that's being praised, which is the king. And his description of Indra, of the demigods in Indra that inspires him, is basically almost there as the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy. What is the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy? A lot of it is material. There's no hunger and thirst, and that Indra, everybody's under his control, and of course, piety is in one sense Krishna's mercy, but not karma sukriti so much as bhakti sukriti. Oh yeah, and that, and then the real thing was, okay, that I understand by his piety, by Indra's a post, you get it by piety. Like Brahma, if you follow the Varnashram system perfectly 100 times, you can get the position of Lord Brahma. I guess eventually coming to the position of a Brahmin in perfect. And without any mistake, because if there's any mistake, it's practically impossible to do something without any mistake. And do it 100 times without any mistake. And Indra did the Ashvamedha Yajna, this horse sacrifice where the horses get rejuvenated life. It's not killing the horses. Somehow it is and it isn't. 100 times perfectly. So, okay, and the rains come at night, that's piety. The rains come at night when it's cool, so the ground could absorb the water, rather if it comes during the day and then the heat is there. It's also more uncomfortable. And it's regular. You can see, even in India, there's still that piety. There's a rainy season. Here in America, it can rain any day of the week, any season, any time. You're putting on a festival and you can, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen now. So that's a challenge, because I'm really trying to figure out basically why is the demigods glorified so much? Because we also know that the demigods line up to take birth in Kali Yuga, because devotion in the form of kirtan is unlimitedly merciful to those devoid of a sense of false prestige. And the Kali Yuga is like a huge recovery group. People like hit bottom, and they come to the point of spiritual life in Kali Yuga. It's an advantage to come to the point of spiritual life. And what's the advantage in Kali Yuga of coming to the point of spiritual life? The advantage is we can come to the point, I'm helpless. You want to control, don't come to Kali Yuga. But it's good for bhakti. It's good for bhakti. And I had this point because I'm writing my Monday morning greetings now, and I didn't know what to write. So I'm writing about, it's called Hell, Brimstone, and Atlantic City. Hell, brimstone, and Atlantic. Hell, brimstone, and fire is an idiom for heavy, preachers about hell. So when I was at Atlantic City, I got that inspiration, because I went to the Rath Yatra. It was 1 hour from where I'm staying. And I walked down the boardwalk, and I don't think I've ever been there, but here were the edifices of cheats, the big hotels, and people. They're not enjoying. They're not enjoying. They're having a temporary relief from more suffering. They're not enjoying. So I was looking at it, and it brought out a little bit of the heavy side of the Krishna conscious philosophy. And then when I spoke at Gop Kishore's, usually I'm more like Krishna Leela, positive, chant and be happy, but I was like hell, brimstone, and fire. And and Jayad Vaitramar spoke after me, and you don't need to encourage him in that aspect of the philosophy, to say the least. So he went on, it was like hell, boom, boom, boom. But I saw in one sense that people really appreciated it. And I think one thing they appreciated because they know he's right. They've had enough experience in the world to know that that there's no real enjoyment here on the material platform. And that it's nice to have a sannyasi come and preach renunciation. It's just like some people preach that we need to wear Western clothes to practice Krishna consciousness. You don't need to preach that. That's what everybody does anyway. You don't need to preach to wear Western clothes. There's only a few people like me that dress like this left. You don't need to preach. It's the same thing, that there's suffering in the material world. People know it. They know it. And the point I made, and it's a simple point, that if you want to be you can't be the enjoyer because you're not the controller. And suffering specifically is when things go beyond your control or desires. You can't be the enjoyer because you're not the controller. You can enjoy, not as a goal, but to be peaceful for a higher goal. But separate from that, it's never going to really reach your satisfaction. Now I am satisfied. I'm the president of the United States, America's topmost model, or I won the lottery, or, you know, we can see it because it's a temporary position, and therefore it's full of duality and fear. It doesn't work. So I guess basically this is going to be Indra's point. You know, you're glorifying me all these things, but how's that Krishna's mercy? You think Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Putin is, you know, the recipient, the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy because they got all the power in the world? Not. And what Indra's going to show is those kind of positions or anything enjoyment in the material world, not connected to a spiritual goal. I take this because I need it. I need it for Krishna. Therefore, attachment and enjoyment is included in Krishna consciousness if we need it for Krishna. And what sannyasis like Jayadvaita Maharaj do, they don't give you an inch beyond that. You're going to meet their resistance. Step over the line, they're going to tell you it's nonsense. Unrelenting. And it's good to have people in society that represent that aspect of Krishna consciousness. Because we're such cheaters. And we rationalize and we take more. And therefore we offend the holy name, because it says it's also an attachment, it's also an offense to be, what is that? It's also an offense. It's an offense. To be materially attached to something. What does it mean? It doesn't mean, that's not an offense to have attachments. It's an offense to have attachments that are separate for Krishna. And the sannyasis are supposed to live that and speak that to hold the line. And when they don't, then there's problems, because the whole society will always follow an example of enjoyment. That's what Nārada Muni was worried about with Vyasadev's thing of the Vedas. He gave some allowance for enjoyment, but people will follow that, not as the restrictive thing, but as the regular thing. Prabhupada gave the example. I don't know why I'm in such a hell, brimstone, and fire mood lately. And then after this, I'll eat my doshas and chutney. What a hypocrite I am. This hell, brimstone, and fire. Yes. That's people follow enjoyment. That's why they come to the material world. And Prabhupada gave the example. When something is allowed and restricted, it doesn't mean it's good. He said, for example, there's a law of how many bars can be on every block. So there can be one bar per block. You can't have two. So they're not encouraging drinking, they're discouraging it, but they're giving an allowance. So now let's follow how Indra will resist and try to tell him, even the fact he's going to discuss his relationship with Vamanadev. He's going to discuss his relationship with Vamanadev. And it's very rasic, very flavorful, but it doesn't mean it's always sweet. So Indra welcomed Nārada in a soft voice, humbly. So Indra's culture. And cultured means respectful. And there's certain acts to show respect, especially when he's going to contradict. He's going to contradict Nārada, but in the one area that you're allowed to. When the authority praises you, you're allowed to disagree with them. It's one area where you can say no. No. So he's going to refute the praise, and he says, Kalā-bhāgavatāmṛta, you're expert in the arts of the Gandharvas. The Gandharvas are singers, but evidently they're also, I don't know, a person trained in the arts that knows how to manipulate with false pride and ridicule. Sounds like Gandharvas are like the planet of Don Rickles, but I don't know if you ever heard of that comedian. But he made his whole thing just insulting people. So they're expert in ridicule, sarcasm. Maybe they just have a good sense of humor, and it's one type of sense of humor. But basically, what Indra's doing, he's looking at Indra, and he's looking at Nārada and says, "You got to be joking. You have to be joking." And again, you can see things from different angles. When you see another Vaishnava, the angle is for their good qualities. When you see yourself, the angle is for your bad qualities. Because that's Vaishnava either way. It's Vaishnava to look at someone and praise them for their good qualities, to see the good in others. And you do that because in terms of spiritual vision, you tend to see someone not for the past, not for the present, but for the future. Seeing the potential of what they're doing. They're following devotional service. This is where it's going to wind up. Srila Dhanurdhara Swami gave that brilliant example of that. I don't know in relation to that. He said when a person is jumping off a building and he jumps, everyone say, look, he's falling. Temporarily, he's going up. He jumps off a building, he's going up, but no one's saying, oh, look, he's flying. No, he's falling because they can see the result. And the same thing with the Vaishnava. The same thing with the Vaishnava. We have to be very, very careful. I'm thinking of one devotee, maybe 2-3 years ago. I saw so many problems. They were struggling with so many things. And in that in that aspect, disturbing people. But at the same time, now I see they're so fixed and so wonderful. It's just a person meeting the challenges according to their karma and the things that disturb them. But if you see their sincerity, you realize that will be the result. That will be the result. So a Vaishnava is more like that. And when you look at yourself, and if you see your faults, you can see the result of that. I won't get Krishna. I won't get Krishna. I'm not changing my internal consciousness. I'm not changing my internal consciousness. And what will happen if I die like that? What's that verse? Yam yam vapi smanam bhavam tajantyante kalevaram tam evaiti konteya sitata. Whatever you're thinking at the time, that nature you will go. Whatever your nature is now, that's where you'll go. You want to know what your mind will be like at the time of death? What are you dreaming? Because dreams means your thoughts and consciousness when the intelligence is not controlling it. And that's what death will be. So you can look at it like that yourself. Of course, teacher means sadhu. He sometimes has to cut. He can't always look just favorable. As the first instructions to Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita were, asochan anvasochas tvam pragyavadams jabashase, gatasun agatasun cha nanus jipan. Although you're speaking learned words, Arjuna, you're a fool. For the wise man's lament neither for the living nor the dead. You're a fool. Because you're lamenting that a person's changing their bodies. That's not lamentation. The lamentation is due to ignorance. They're identifying with it. That we lament for. She said, my dear Nārada, expert in the arts, why are you making fun of me? This is like a joke. Asya naswagarajasya pratam vetsi tvameva kim kativaram ito dhaitya vidyasmabhir nanirgatam. Are you unfamiliar with what ruling heaven means? Don't you know how many times we demigods have had to flee heaven in fear of the Daityas? So you may have a very big position, but do you know how many people want to take you down? Do you know how much fear there is? Just look at this. I look at this famous New York maxim. You ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose. But what to speak of Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, whatever he is, and this guy and that guy. They are suffering so much because they don't believe in God. And what they're attached to, they're all going to lose, and they know it. It's such a suffering position. When you have something and you become attached and you're going to lose it, because the degree you're attached is the degree you'll suffer pain. So these people at the time of death, without understanding God, understanding their eternality, their future is so much suffering. And the simple, pious, religious person, he may not have much. Thinking sometimes some of the people in Colombia, or my friend Sridhar in Govardhan with the Malis, like, death doesn't have the same drama because they live in a culture where they know they're the soul. Doesn't have the same drama, like, oh my God. Like we're talking with Jai Great tomorrow about Kadamba, changing service. Death is a change of service. Death is a change of body. I believe Prabhupada once said, what is death but another birthday? So he's saying to Indra, are you unfamiliar? Are you unfamiliar of Daitya, Bhitya, the fear we have of our enemies? And that's it in the world. There is a struggle in the world. There are demons in the world, and there are devotees in the world. There's a struggle. And then there's Krishna, who's seeing that even the people who are religious, they're living in such an illusion of a materialistic civilization that's not spiritual. They're living in such, the whole society, will it be Krishna's mercy to just take this whole thing down so that we can depend on Krishna? Isn't that a wonderful hell, brimstone, and fire thought? Krishna may take this whole, we're so opulent. I'm talking about people in America. It's so opulent. Even the economy's crashing. Everybody has their cars or nice cars. And they can buy, they don't have to grow their food. They just buy their organic raisins for $15 for 10 pieces. and then buy their organic broccoli for like $6 for a bunch. You could feed the poor people in Africa for the whole year for that money. You think Krishna's going to keep this up if we're just... I can see it. Look, people have money. They're throwing their money away and gambling in Atlantic City. The rich get richer and this. So it's Krishna's mercy to just keep everything peaceful so that we wallow in this material conception and die in fear. What's coming over me? It's just... Acharan balir indratvam asuran eva sarvata suyendra yadikareshu nayuktan kratubhagabuk. One of them, Bali, even once took over as Indra. He appointed demons to all the posts, like the sun god and moon god, and took for himself my shares of the sacrifice. So even a demon took over. I'm daitya bitya, I'm fearful. Well, I have a reason to be fearful. My post was taken over and I was like starving. I went from the king of heaven and I couldn't even get a few rotis. And that happens all the time in the world. It happens all the time. Except for that man who realizes the soul and acts according to that platform of the soul and starts to identify as a servant of Krishna, because that doesn't end with the body. The thing which you become most attached with in terms of being a devotee will not end with the body. The thing you'll be attached to as a materialist, it'll all end with the body. The family will end with the body, the money will end with the body, your prestige will end with the body. But for a devotee, the service won't end with the body, the identity, the holy name, guru, everything. It doesn't end with the body. Purport, Nārada just told Indra, the sun god and other rulers of planets obey your orders. You're so great. I mean, the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy. Look how nice that is. To counter this, Indra questions the value of the demigod's controlling power, which the demigods are always in anxiety of losing. He also questions whether he's actually glorified by having such uncertain rulers as his order carriers. Because Indra's in charge of the demigods. So Indra ashamedly remembers how he almost died from hunger and thirst when Bali usurped and enjoyed Indra's share of the sacrifice. Indra thus responds to the southern king's statement, their food is the nectar of mortality. I couldn't even get a meal. You're saying I'm the recipient of Krishna's mercy? What about the recipient of Krishna's mercy when I was lying on the ground? I didn't have food, I didn't have water because it took away everything I had. Tato nas tata matribhyam tapo bir vitatai jidai tashito pyamsa matrena gato bratri tvam uchita. Our father and mother then performed many severe austerities by which they satisfied the Supreme Lord Achyuta. The Lord responded by appearing as my brother in a mere partial expansion of himself. I didn't even get the full God. He didn't manifest himself fully to me. So I don't know. My parents prayed and God came. Okay, but now find out what it's like in my life. Tatap yatap, tatap yahatva, tan shatrun, kevalam nas japakrita, mayaya janayadhaya, Bale rajyam dadau same. And even then, instead of killing those enemies, he only embarrassed me, returning my kingdom after taking it from Bali with a deceptive request for charity. So Bali took my kingdom, but then how'd I get it back? Yeah, by Vamana, by my younger brother. But I was so embarrassed because he cheated the guy. He wasn't even honest in doing it. Purport, an aristocratic lord like Indra might well feel demeaned by such treatment. Instead of fighting for the demigod's right property in an honorable way, Lord Achyuta, that's his brother, Vamana, resorted to tricks. He disguised himself as a dwarf and asked Bali for just as much land as 3 of his steps could cover. And when he obtained that charity on a pretext, made himself larger than the universe. He embarrassed me. We're warriors. We should win by fighting, not by cheating. Sparadashu yadi doshena prama hatyari papata nityapata payenapi kim shuham swarga vasinam. We residents of heaven are tainted with faults like rivalry and jealousy. For such acts of killing Brahmins, we get entangled in the reactions of sin, and we live in constant fear of losing our post. So what happiness do we enjoy? The southern king had said that the demigods are always worshipable by men. So now he's responding to this. He had cited several reasons for this, but here Indra answers. He refutes the statement that the king made, that Indra was accepting, that demigods are fixed in goodness by reminding Nārada that they are quarrelsome. He defeats the statements that they are sinless by recalling how he killed Vritra, Vishrup, and others, and he diminishes that their bodies are effulgent by pointing out the opposite is true, because demigods constantly anticipate some fall from their positions. As Lord Krishna commented to his friend Uddhava, I may put this in my Monday morning greetings of hell, brimstone, in Atlantic City. Quote, death is not at all pleasing, and since everyone is exactly like a condemned man being led to the place of execution, what possible happiness can people derive from material objects or association they provide? Bhagavatam 11:10-20. He says, what are you joking me? Look at my life. I'm not that better than ever. You're saying, oh, you're sinless, you're in goodness. You're like, oh, look at us. I killed a Brahmin. I killed this guy. I'm fighting this way. Kim chamam pratyupendrasya vidyapeksham vasheshata sudharmam parijatam cha swargam matya nanayasaha. You must also know that my brother Lord Apendra intentionally disregarded me by taking from heaven the Sudharma hall and the Parijata flower and bringing them to the earth. So the pride of Indra was his assembly hall. And the Parijata flower, which only grew there. And then Indra takes it to earth. In the form of Krishna comes and wants it for, I think it's Rukmini or Satyabhama. So you're thinking, I'm so opulent and so this and that, and then all of a sudden, and Vamana, you're so fortunate to have Vamana. Yeah, look what my younger brother does. The glorious Sudharma hall, which is the pride of my kingdom of heaven, and the Parijata flower, which is the national flower of, he took him. I'm just suffering like everyone else. He ruined the worship the cowards had been offering me for many years. And he burned down my favorite forest, the vast Gandharva. So look, Nārada, please, you got to be kidding. Oh, yeah, Vamana is your brother. Oh, yeah, Vamana is your brother. You have God as your brother. Right. What does he do? I have it set up. It's very nice. I give rains, then the people give me the sacrifice. It's a great system. What does Krishna do? He stops it. And then there's another story, burns down my favorite forest. You think we're the chosen people? Nārada, you think we're the chosen people? Maybe God should choose someone else next time. With no regard for me, he destroyed my capital, Amaravati, and built a new residence above all others for himself. So this is another thing he did. It just goes on and on. He accepts our worship on the strength of our parents' devotion and at the assistance of any priest. After then taking our offerings, he often disappears, returning to his own abode. So it's great. He comes, Jai Vamana, he's gone. We suffer so much every time. We love him. We love him, but it's not right. He would show me compassion if he would just stay here, accept my worship. Then I can tolerate everything else he does. But how much time does he even let me see him? Okay, if he stayed here, we worship him, then I tolerate, okay, he took the Sudharma, he took the Parijata, he stopped my sacrifice, he burnt my forest. Okay, at least if I can have darshan, if he stayed here permanently, then you can make that argument. But he keeps on going. Just when we get used to it. Then he suddenly comes back. I tell him, we are very much obliged to you for accepting our offerings of argya. But he cunningly replies, whenever I am not here to accept your offerings, you may worship Brahma or Shiva, or instead, indeed, both of them are not different from me. According to scriptural statements, the three deities, Rudra, Vishnu, and Brahma, are embodiments of the same being. Have you forgotten? Purport. From Indra's statement, these words are simply deceitful. Vamana knows very well that Indra is attracted to worshiping only the Supreme Lord. Yet he teases him by quoting from scripture, trying to persuade him to worship other people. And because I have to honor his request, I'm forced to do it. And then we say I'm holding festivals for Shiva and Brahma because he says that, but I'm not into this. And still I got to do it. And he's my younger brother. But he has this position of God, so I have to respect him. So much trouble for you think I'm free following his authority. Okay. That's for today. Now, Chamunajaya has to do something, I think, taking her mother to visit somebody. So, Gail, I hope.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The very last thing that you mentioned here reminded me of two things concerning the gopis. One was when, what I'm referring to is the fact that Vamana Dev instructed Lord Indra to worship Brahma and Shiva in his absence. So that reminded me of the gopis' conversation with Uddhava, who told the gopis that, he was giving them gyan, that Krishna's everywhere. So, totally unsatisfying. And so I felt like Lord Brahma was, could relate to the gopis in that situation.
Well, that's a good example, right? Yeah.
And also when the other scene was when Krishna was teasing the gopis when he had them come out to him in the dead of the night,
Yeah.
And then he was like sending them back home on some lame pretext, so it was, anyway, those are the two things that came to my mind.
This reminds me when Bṛhad Swami came to New York, he never does, but he came once in the last 30, 40 years, and he asked Kastuba to take him to the places of Tamal Krishna Maharaj's birth and Leela on the northwest side of Central Park, where he grew up in Harlem. So we congregated at the beginning of the park, and we were all going to go for a nice walk. It was myself, Bṛhad Swami, Kastuba, a few other people. I don't remember who else was there. So we were all sitting on a bench and making our plans. And this guy looks at us with such hostility and says, "You know who your Krishna is?" And we were just, oh my God. fanatic, Christian, we become lit. He goes, "He's a butter thief." And then he starts laughing. And then I joke with Giriraj. I said, "This is why I like New York. You get any of this in that plastic place called Santa Barbara?" Right? That West Coast place, plastic people, artificial. This is real here.
Wow, what a curveball that was.
And I like Gail because you listened to every one of my classes in the last 15 years. So you've heard that at least 10 times.
Never.
You know it's coming, so you can appreciate it and laugh even before it comes because it's such a charming story. Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna, Gumaraj, Tota Gopinath here. So good to hear from you.
Okay, Tota, Haribo.
Haribo.
We all had fun on that Saturday. That was a great program.
Yeah.
And I like the cooking in New Jersey. Throw out all principles of Ayurveda. Satisfy Krishna's tongue with pleasure of, I don't know, that macaroni and cheese and that lasagna with eggplant and, and that Jai Subhadra sweet rice and the coffee cake, not coffee cake. Jai Shirade cooked, and then, at least you had the decency to bring a salad with almond sauce.
Well, I thought, hey, it's going to be a death row meal. We have a little salad at the end. Why not?
And Govinda brought his dal, so at least we.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. This is Krishna-katha. Thank you so much for the class.
Thank you.
Thank you greatly.
Still, the reception there is not so good, but you can hear something. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Garaj. Salal Govinda.
And Braja, thank you for class.
Okay, so we'll see you, Braja, in a couple of weeks.
Yes, can't wait.
Oh, it's going to be fun. We'll have such a group up there.
Okay,
yeah,
can't
wait.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, Narmasaki here.
Wow.
Thank you
Nice.
for the
So nice to hear your voice. Great.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Anybody else? It feels so good. I can still contact people in places where I can't go. Okay. Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it's Gopi Gita. Thank you for class.
Gopi Gita, Haribo. Okay, great. Nice to hear from you. Okay. Is Greg and Indra there with you yet?
Yes, they are here. They are sleeping now because they are a bit tired, but they are okay.
Well, so nice that you're able to offer that facility to people that come. It's great.
I'm very happy to do it. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I will head out.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Amala,
This is Samala.
okay. See you
Thank
again.
you so much.
We'll try. Good. Thank you. Good. Very well. Okay. Can head out. Just look at the list of names. I see everybody there, and I thank you all for coming. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha.